Okay, so for no expenses spared, I'm making this little clip to help people to how to make a pattern for turn shoes. Now, we've had numerous people say, "Hey, why don't we do the sock and duct tape thing and wrap my foot around this duct tape and and make a pattern for my foot with that?" And you can. And a lot of people have. What I don't like about it is that it doesn't take in the concept that you need a little bit of extra space for the actual sewing, and it is very tight, and it doesn't take any consideration for the toes. You need a little bit more extra space at the toes than a normal shoe, because the normal so for a shoe, so imagine this being the sole of your foot. Um, a modern shoe will come along and just come underneath, and it's glued down, and so it can wrap around the toe really nice and snug. Medieval shoes don't do that, because the upper and the sole will have to join without any overlaps, and so it has to come down and on an angle. Trying to get the angles right on an angle, and can't do that. Um, so you need to have a little bit of space, and I use a finger width. That's just me. It's not the rule of thumb, it's a finger width, because rule of thumb is too thick. Um, and it gives you enough space for the toe, so the leather can do its thing. So this is not a foot fetish video, but if you want to be it, go for it. No kink shaming here. Okay, so the first, so that's just me looking at me about everything. So the rest of this is really going to be about my feet. So to start off, unless you've got a club foot or something, you only need to make the pattern of one foot. And if you want to, and ladies might know this, a lot of guys don't, one foot may be slightly larger than the other. My recommendation is to make the pattern for the larger foot. Otherwise, you make it for the smaller foot, then your large foot doesn't fit inside it. If you've got a pair of feet that are vastly different, and you don't want to have just a floppy shoe on the smaller foot, make two patterns. But generally, most people only need to make one, because the one that you make for your right foot, you turn it upside down, and you've got the pattern for the other foot. So let's get cracking. Okay, so here we have, hopefully this is a good angle, and we'll test and adjust as we go through. This is an old dog blanket. I went to an op shop. It's got some really terrible holes in it. It's not a great thing for anything else, unless you want to be a revolting peasant, and that looks like a fantastic blanket. So I'm just using an old blanket. The reason why I'm using blanket and not paper or linen, like a thin fabric or something like that, because roughly this this wool is roughly the thickness of the leather that you're going to be making shoes out of. What I do anyway. Okay, so the first part is measuring the sole of your foot. Okay, 1 foot on the top, and you try and save as much, so don't do this and stomp into the center. Come into the edge. Okay, I'm using just a texter. It's just easier to draw on the blanket instead of just using a biro or something like that. Notice how I'm trying to keep my pen vertically. Vertical. Going around, and I'm going around both sides, and I'm following first up just that straight line of the foot. And yes, you probably will draw on your foot. Now you probably can't see this, you shouldn't be able to see it, but I'm going around the heel, but again, making sure that it's upright. Don't dig the pen in trying to get underneath the heel. You'll just make it a shoe that's too small. And also, again, these wonderful pants I've got. So I'm doing it standing up, just simply so I can put in the full pressure on the foot to make sure I expand out the foot to the way it should be. I then put the rule of finger up here, and I'm going to give that much toe space. And I'm going to draw a line here, and I'm going to draw around so it then lines up with the knuckle of the little toe. Hopefully you can see that. I then mark the big toe, because when I start sewing the sole to the upper, I start at the big toe. It just mitigates the any errors. If I start sewing here and going around and I miscalculated, that means the upper might not be landing here, it might be over here, or it might be over here, and you won't have a well-fitting shoe. So you mark where your big toe is. The front of your shin, draw a line down on either side, and the left and right. So you can now see I've got two marks here, and I've got the mark at the toe. Now, since this is my right foot, I'm going to put R there. So if I flip it over, you'll see that. So what I've got here is a very wide pattern. Now, if you've got inner soles, please wear the inner soles when you're doing this, especially for the second part. But our feet, unless you're flat-footed like I am, will have this arch coming into here. So with your foot on here, you go in, making sure it doesn't tickle too much, draw it up, and you can see here how it's come in. I'll move the camera around a little bit. So, and quite badly, sorry, apologies. As you can see, hopefully you can see. And editing is not my thing, so I have to try and get it right the first time because I can't be bothered. Okay, so that is the sole. The second part is the upper, which is the top of the foot. Now to do this, I get the edge of the blanket and I simply put my foot underneath it. So this edge is at the front of my shin coming down here. And I drape it. I don't pull it tight. And as I tucked in underneath to draw this curve here, I'm going to tuck it into here as well and draw that line. I'm slightly tucking into the corners along here, coming up to the big toe. I'm marking the big toe. I'm coming forwards to mark where that extra finger length is. And I'm drawing around the foot. You can draw around the actual foot as well, and then add on. And you're drawing all the way around to the front. Oh, sorry, to where the shin is. So you should have, this shouldn't be tight, so don't stretch it. You should be able to get, excuse me, as I set my heavy ass down, there's enough space here so it's loose. Having a very tight foot, tight shoe is really, really difficult to wear, and it's easier to make do with a slightly looser shoe than a tighter one. As you can see, I've now got this weird shape. That is what your foot looks like. And it's really handy, especially if you've got bunions or you've got damage to your feet. When you're doing this pattern, make sure that you're wearing the inner soles, if you're wearing inner soles when you're doing this, because if you don't, you'll make a shoe that's too small for your foot. Okay, so at the end, once you're happy with what you've got, you then cut it out. Please cut along that line, not just on the outside of it, along the line. Because if you cut outside of it, you then add a couple of mils on either side, and then you get an excessively floppy shoe, and then you have to do things to adjust that. Or this one, it's becomes too big and you have an excessively floppy shoe. So measure it, check it twice, make sure it's okay, and then cut it out. Then after that, you then can start making shoes, and that's a totally different video. And normally it takes me about at least 8 hours of instruction to get people to actually make a pair of shoes. But the big thing to remember with these two, you can make basically any form of footwear from here, whether it's a Viking Jorvik shoe, a medieval shoe, boots. I've even made one of those high boots that come up to the knees. All sorts of, because this is the shape of the foot. I don't have to worry about the shape of the heel necessarily, because I can just measure this. I know that this going around here will go around here, and I can easily measure what this is going to be. Okay, so here we go. So thank you very much. I know that's been 11 and a half minutes of your life that you might never get back again. But anyway, this is what it is. I've done photos before of footwear, and it might have confused some people. And also you hear the dulcet tones of myself as I'm explaining it. Okay, thank you very much.